Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. We start with news of a secret operation inside the White House which will strike fear into the hearts of America's allies and delight its enemies. And yes, I have got that the right way around. It's called Operation Don't Let Joe Biden Fall. And it's billed as a critical project too, quite literally prop up the president. Biden's blunders and stumbles have become a crisis for his re-election campaign, with a whopping 75% of Americans now saying he's too old to lead the country. The Biden administration publicly insists the 80-year-old leader is fighting fit, and they've got the receipts to prove it. Well, sort of. He remains, of course, a keen cyclist. He has excellent spatial awareness.
2, 10, 12, 15. Oops, stepping on it's black. Anyway.
And he has a great sense of direction, of course.
Where is he?
But one thing they can't deny is that Biden has a problem staying on his feet. And that's the focus of the special program they've now put together. This is why they're doing it.
No matter what their cost. 2, 10, 12, 15. Oops, stepping on it's black. Anyway.
Well, Axios reports that top Democrats are terrified Biden will suffer a bad fall in the run-up to November's election. Their new two-pronged strategy is to both reduce the number of times Biden falls over by literally training him not to fall over, and reduce the opportunities he has to fall over. He'll now board and exit Air Force One through the lower deck, where he'll encounter fewer steps. Instead of boarding the plane like a president, he'll board it a bit like a suitcase. Initial evidence suggests that this may still be a challenge. The report says that Biden will now wear tennis shoes wherever possible instead of adult shoes, so he has better grip. He's also working daily with a physical therapist, and his doctors recommended he improves his balance by conducting proprioceptive maintenance manoeuvres. What those manoeuvres entail is unclear, but what is crystal clear is that they're all designed to desperately reanimate a president who just doesn't seem fit for the job, physically or mentally. Last night, 7 of the 8 leading Republican presidential candidates faced off in the second Fox debate. Once again, the elephant not in the room was Donald Trump, who's light years ahead in the polls. My question is simply this: surely America and the world can do better than a 77-year-old who's facing jail and an 80-year-old whose campaign strategy is don't fall over. Well, joining me now to discuss all this is a Republican strategist and former chair of the anti-Trump Republicans, Liz Mayer, the Conservative talk radio host sensation, Ben Ferguson, I think he wrote that, and the CEO of Outkick, Clay Travis. Well, welcome to all of you. A stellar panel to debate all things Trump, who is, of course, the elephant in the room. So, Liz, let me start with you. Trump is basically now calling for all Republican debates to be cancelled. Without him, there's no point. The Republican Party should save their money, invest it all in going after Biden. Meanwhile, the president is having a whole plan to try and keep him on his feet. I've got to say, from this end of the pond, this all looks a bit ridiculous. You've got a guy facing 100 criminal charges, and you've got a bloke in the office who can't barely see or walk straight. What is happening?
It's pathetic. I would just like to say at this moment that I'm British as well as American, and I am leaning really hard into being a conservative, which, given how bad our polling is, should really tell you something. No, it's pathetic. We have a nation of, 350 million people, and this is the best we can do. I'm just lucky I live in a state that nobody's going to be contesting, so I can write in whoever I want and feel good about my vote. But generally, yeah, it's a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster.
Ben Ferguson, it's a complete disaster.
Yeah, I wish you'd stop showing those videos of Joe Biden, because you're about to get rid of the candidate that I desperately want to run any Republican against. So if you'll stop doing that, and let's just say he's brilliant, let's say he's competent, let's say he is a vigorous young man, just like Ronald Reagan, that would make my life a lot easier. But the reality is, Democrats right now put themselves in a corner. If you look at Joe Biden, honestly, right, the way that you just did, you got to be sitting there going, what the hell are we doing? But they're stuck with him. And then you look at Kamala Harris. You say, okay, well, maybe Kamala will calm down people because they'll say, hey, if someone has to take over, at least they'll like the VP. The problem is her approval rating is even worse than Joe Biden's right now, which is at Jimmy Carter levels. So it's a disaster for them. As for the Republicans, look, I think any Republican, Donald Trump, DeSantis, or if somebody else comes along, I don't think it's going to happen based on what I saw at the debates last night. But if someone else came along, they all want to run against Joe Biden because there's no way he can campaign vigorously. And I don't think COVID's going to save him from doing more debates in the future. I think this guy's a train wreck and they know it.
But talking of train wrecks, Donald Trump, who is the runaway favourite now to win Republican nomination and wants all the debates scrapped and so on, he is facing nearly 100 criminal charges. We are into completely unprecedented territory here, where you could end up with the Republican nominee being convicted of some of these charges before an election, potentially even sent to a prison cell, which I suspect would increase his poll numbers, like everything else that's been done legally to him. But how can that be right for America, to have a president sitting in cell block H?
People aren't worried about it. I mean, that's the reality. They're not worried. The Republican Party
may
has
not
made
be,
it
but
clear.
you should
They're
be,
not worried.
As an American
No,
voter.
I'm not either, because I think that these charges, and if you look at them, they're pretty ridiculous and egregious. You made up charges in Georgia when the statute of limitations had already run out, for goodness sakes. And when you fight these, I don't worry about it. And I think the American people showing that they still support him in the Republican primary, he's got a 40-point lead. Combine everyone else's poll numbers, they don't even add up to even anywhere close to where Donald Trump is polling by himself right now. So that's how little Republicans care about this. They know it's a witch hunt. They know it's going after your political opponent in the way they do in the Banana Republic. And the poll numbers show that the majority of Americans, the Republicans, are smart enough to understand this is political crap. It's Banana Republic crap. It's what they do in Russia and China. And they're not worried about it. That's why he's still polling where he is.
All right, Clay Travis, you like DeSantis. I've interviewed Ron DeSantis. He's an impressive character. He gets stuff done is his big mantra. He's done a very good job as governor of Florida, no doubt about it. It seems to me DeSantis, I thought he was the best on the debate stage last night, actually, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Now, let's take a little look at DeSantis in action last night, actually.
The former president, he's missing in action tonight. He's had a lot to say about that. He should be here explaining his comments to try to say that pro-life protections are somehow a terrible thing.
You know, the problem, Clay, is he's right. Trump should be there. And I know Chris Christie called him Donald Duck, and that's fine. We all have a good laugh. But if you're Donald Trump, you think, why do I have to bother? I'm so far ahead of all of these people. Why do I have to bother turning up to any debate? I've got this in the bag. He's right, isn't he?
Well, yeah, he's right now so far, and that's why the biggest question coming out of this debate, and thanks for having me on, Piers, by the way, is everybody else needs to drop out of the race, but potentially Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, they need to be able to fight it out, figure out who is the unquestioned number two, and then they need to have a head-to-head with Donald Trump. And remember, as crazy as the Democrat process was in 2020, what did they do? Joe Biden got smoked in Iowa. He got crushed in New Hampshire. He left before the vote was even taken in New Hampshire. I think he finished 5th and 6th. And then what happened? James Clyburn, congressman from South Carolina, said all that matters is beating Donald Trump. Joe Biden is the choice. He's our guy, and it was over. The Democrats said, we're going to pick the guy that we believe is the most electable. It's old, boring, plotting, dementia Joe. They may have gotten lucky with COVID happening, honestly, because that allowed them to keep Joe Biden in the basement and not get out, and everybody could see how physically frail and mentally diminished he was. But they made the decision, he's the guy that's most likely to win. Think about this, Piers. Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley running against Joe Biden would be a unmitigated disaster for Democrats. And I think what's changed here is a lot of Republicans are so convinced that Joe Biden is going to lose that they aren't even focused on the electability angle as much as they can be.
I think the problem,
but remember,
look, I think
Trump has half of the electorate right now. The other half is for somebody else.
Right. The problem, I think, for your guy, DeSantis, is I think it's a charisma issue. That most people think he's competent, he's done a good job, blah, blah, blah. He just doesn't have anywhere near Trump's charisma. Funny enough, the one with all the charisma on the stage last night is Vivek Ramaswamy, if you could inject that charisma into DeSantis with his experience as governor and success, you probably have a very, very, very compelling candidate. Let's take a look at Vivek.
Transgenderism, especially in kids, is a mental health disorder. We have to acknowledge the truth of that for what it is. Campaign.
On parental rights in schools.
Parents have the right to know. The very people who say that this increases the risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know about that increased risk of suicide. And I'm sorry, it is not compassionate to affirm a kid's confusion. That is not compassion, that is cruelty. So I will ban genital mutilation or chemical castration under the age of 18.
So I also want to play now the Christie gag about Donald Duck, because it was funny. Let's take a look at this.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right.
Now, you see, he's quite funny, Christie, and he's a bit of an old bruiser. I like him. I've known him a long time, and that was a funny gag. If you combine his humour and kind of pugnacious style with Vivek's energy and dynamism and charisma, with the competence of DeSantis, you've got a very, very strong candidate. The problem is none of them have the other two components. And Trump, in his own way, love him, hate him, think he's the worst thing ever, all the greatest things since sliced bread. He has it all. And that's why, at the moment, he's steaming ahead.
Yes.
Can I just jump here and make a couple of points?
That's 100%
First
right.
of all,
Yeah, Liz,
I
go
think
on.
it's worth noting, when you take a look at a lot of these post-debate polls, though, what you say about Vivek sounds like it's right, but when you look at how voters are actually responding, he's actually coming off very, very negatively to quite a lot of Republican primary voters. So I'm not sure that you're quite right about his charisma. I agree with you that Ron DeSantis does need some sort of charisma injection, for sure. I'm not sure that him necessarily borrowing from Chris Christie is the best move, though. I actually thought the Donald Duck line fell a little bit flat. I thought it was a little obvious. I didn't find it particularly humorous. I also do think that DeSantis and Christie need to quit saying that Trump needs to show up at these debates, because one of the really interesting things, and we saw this in 2016 also, when Trump skips debates, other people move up, and his floor, the absolute minimum that he's going to get, actually goes down. That happened after the last debate. I bet it's going to happen after this debate.
Let me bring in Ben on that.
That does matter.
I agree with you. Ben, here's the issue, it seems to me. Trump could well run away with this Republican nomination. It looks like he might. But if he does, a lot of independents have a problem with Trump. And you've got to win with the independents to become president. And it may be that if Biden insists on running, that the only way the Democrats win that next election is if Trump is the opponent, because the anti-Trump vote comes out, as you know, and the independents don't like him and they won't like all the legal stuff, that actually Trump may steamroller everyone to get the nomination for the Republican Party and then actually lose again.
Yeah, look, I think that there's two things here with Trump. It depends on if he can be a disciplined politician in a general election. And you'll probably laugh at the idea of him being disciplined. But look, he's been pretty smart recently. And I think he's starting to understand that he's got to be smart about how he talks for the same reason that you just said. If he talks about the here and now, and he doesn't take those loaded questions about the past and relitigating the past, and he talks about gas prices and interest rates and the economy and securing the border and building the wall, he will destroy Joe Biden. If he is undisciplined and he goes back and tries to litigate the past and say, I won the last election, he gets bogged down in that, you're right. There's a chance that Joe Biden could win. But Joe Biden will not win because he has the best set of plans for this country or ideas. He is a disaster, a stumbling, falling down disaster.
He would win because he's not Donald Trump. I want to end by getting all of you.
He will also win.
Well, hang on. I've run out of time. Here's what I want to ask all of you. And I need straight answers. I want to have the two names for the two people that will face off in this presidential race next year. I want to have a name of a winner as well. So, Liz, you go first.
That's tough to say. It's really tough to say. Right now, the polling does suggest it's going to be Biden and Trump, but I have this sneaking suspicion that somehow it could end up being somebody like Brian Kemp versus Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker, because I think both of these guys are so old and decrepit.
All right.
And
Well, you can't name
They
a load
might
of names.
die. They might die.
I need 2 names and a winner. Go on, Liz.
Okay, well, let's go with Newsom and Kemp. And I think in that contest, I think Kemp dusts Newsom, and I'm a happy camper.
Okay. Ben?
I'm just going to go back to reality. I'll bet you seats at Wimbledon because it's on my bucket list, Piers. It's going to be Trump and Biden, and no one else matters.
And who wins?
I think Donald Trump. I think Joe Biden and what you showed earlier is going to be what you're going to see for the next year and a half.
There's
Remember,
no doubt about that. And by the way, there will be far more added to the greatest hits too. Clay?
Yeah.
2 names and a winner.
All right, I'll give you a fun one. Piers. I think it's going to be Donald Trump. I think the Democrats are going to end up drafting Michelle Obama.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be Trump versus Michelle Obama.
Wow.
And Michelle Obama finds her way into the White House.
She would be amazing, but I don't.
Shoot her into the Democratic debates. Get ready. She'll come in at the convention. I actually, Clay and I agree on this.
She would be great. I think she would be great. I actually think she was. I think
Biden is going to get so much worse physically that it's going to be impossible, and they'll have a brokered convention, and they'll have to find somebody new.
Michelle Obama would be formidable. I think a really good candidate. I just don't think she'll ever do it. But we've got to leave it there. We'll find out. Thank you to my pack. I appreciate it.